All right, speaking of sun, this
Yes.
kind of brings us back to today. Today we had talked kind of before.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I think about how we were kind of like talking about like ADD and kind of growing up and
Hmm.
just kind of like learning about myself and trying to. We talked about how like ADD and ADHD didn't really kind of come about until like I guess like the 70s, and whether it was just because uh, there was just like such an influx in people that it just kind of came noticeable, or whether it was just like they finally came up with this disorder, and then a lot more people kind of, I guess, kind of like fell into that bucket. And we
Yeah.
were kind of talking about how if there was anything like in the environment that kind of maybe led to a potential increase. Like I think I threw out first like because with ADD HD you're kind of constantly kind of seeking these dopamine spikes,
Yep.
and whether it had to do with like the demonization of like the fat, and then kind of like the rise of the sugar industry,
Hmm. Hmm.
and also like maybe like the petrochemical companies and like all these forever chemicals that are kind of thrown into things, and then you're like it's the light.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely get into it, but like the
And so yeah, it's basically it's like I think we're kind of where we were getting at is the kind of I guess advancement in like our technology, and how uh, we kind of grew up in I guess kind of end of Gen X, beginning of Gen Y, kind of like the rise of uh, computers and TVs, video games.
yeah, so like the technology age, I mean, it clearly started before us, but you know, the internet truly wasn't like it was like mid 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember when the internet came out.
I mean like 94, 95, like as I'm talking like AOL and where people were actually getting on it, like households, not just at your university or something like that. So I feel like there's definitely an influx point. I would say it probably starts all the way back in probably in the 50s, the World War II, 40s, 50s, but we really don't see it until the 70s. That's probably where we start to see the true influx. Um, but the cynic in me is, whenever you talk about ADD or ADHD, it's like we start to define it, and if we can define it, then we can sell a drug for it. you know,
Yes.
so it's like I'm sure parents were dealing with children that maybe weren't as you know behaviorally, just all the time. But I think that until we put a label on it, then we can diagnose it, and then we can, prescribe medication for it. Um, and it's like, for every pill, there's an ill, right? So it's like we create the problem, and then we then sell you the solution.
Yes.
So this all goes back to the light story. So artificial lights, our bodies aren't designed to be in artificial light, plain and simple. Like our bodies, we've evolved to be around them, but you know when did the power grid, so 1904, like if you want to keep going back in time, 1904 is whenever like the world is illuminated for like a majority, with the World's Fair. And you can go back a little bit further, like 1893, whenever, light was being, more like used. So we've been dealing with this artificial light for a long time. But, in the 1970s, no one had cell phones. So in the 1950s, no one had, like TVs weren't in every household. So whenever some of these research studies were done, the people that were reading them didn't really care because they weren't seeing the effects because it wasn't really around to the same extent as it is now.
Yeah.
So, depending on the stats you look at, I think the average household has up to 12 to 14 devices. That's multiple TVs, multiple cell phones, iPads, all these communicating devices. They're communicating over either Wi-Fi or some sort of radio frequency. Well, those aren't naturally occurring frequencies. Like they're a man-made frequency. So we don't realize how they're affecting our biology because it's not something that we can tangibly feel per se. But the effects are happening at like the micro scale. And we don't necessarily see it until down the road, really.
Sounds kind of like a little tinfoily, but let's keep going down.
Speaking of tinfoil, so do you know where the tinfoil hat came from?
Oh, I remember. I can't remember. I think I just remember hearing about this. It's because isn't it like something like literally trying to block EMF
Yeah. So
radiation?
again, don't quote me on the date, but between I believe it was in the 50s, 60s, Alan Fry, he was studying the effects of electromagnetic frequencies. And there were 3 ambassadors to Russia that all came down with bloodborne cancers. And they couldn't figure out why. Well, it turns out Moscow was sending in electromagnetic radiation to the embassy, basically irradiating these people. They all came down with bloodborne cancers, and they eventually used tinfoil to block the radio waves. So the original kind of tinfoil hat, that's kind of where it originated from.
Yeah. So we see this advancement in kind of technology aids, this kind of artificial light, but also just more electronics that are in our day-to-day life. And let's maybe kind of start with the light. If I feel like it's probably progressively gotten worse and worse. So people kind of, you hear nowadays talk about like blue light and that being such a bad thing for us. It's not necessarily bad. I think just that the timing kind of comes into factor as far as when we get certain types of lights, and then also the advancements in technology we're getting more of the bad lights at the wrong times of day and not getting good lights.
I mean, timing is absolutely important, but the quality and the quantity is absolutely also important. So you could make the argument you need blue light in the morning because that helps wake you up. But
so blue light wakes you up, and that's in all of our tech. It's coming from like all of our screens.
Yeah,
LED lights.
So yeah, and we'll get into like why LED lights are the standard now. I'll come back to that. But so yeah, blue light wakes you up in the morning. But so you hear that and you're like, oh, okay, well, whenever I turn my lights on, yeah, they're a white light. But if you look at, like, if we took a spectroscope and held it up to these lights, you would see this super sharp spike in the blue range, and you would basically see 0 red or infrared.
So you're saying I should skip my coffee in the morning and just look at my cell phone?
No. I mean, sure, why not? But the problem, so sunlight first thing in the morning is very unique. So whenever the sun is coming up over the horizon, it's at a very low angle, right?
Yes.
So if you think of Earth's surface Earth's atmosphere,
Okay.
there's like this layer,
Yeah.
right? Well, if the sun is shining at the horizon, it's shining through the most amount of atmosphere compared to whenever, like, there's more that it has to shine through because it's shining at such a low angle
Yeah.
versus direct. So what we get is, so infrared and red are the lower energy wavelengths.
Roy G. Biv, I'm with you.
So whenever we see a sunrise, like first thing in the morning, we do not really get hardly any UV. Like it's barely present. Um, but the blue light is perfectly balanced with the red. So in nature, you're never going to see blue light or red light in isolation. Everything is always balanced. The problem that we get with technology or artificial lights, they've tuned the spectrum to whatever they want, and it's very narrow in the blue range, and they've completely eliminated the balance. And even the bulbs that claim to be balanced, most of them aren't. And even if you get an LED bulb that looks more yellow or looks a little bit more on the warmer side, if you will, of the spectrum, again, if you took a spectroscope to it, it's not going to get, like, they can make it look whatever they want to make it look like, but the actual, like, LEDs that are driving the light are still very narrowly in the blue range, even though it gives off like a yellowish hue.
It's like they just put it through like a filter of some sort.
Well, so that's the thing. So the sun is not polarized light. So that means that it's kind of coming from all directions, whereas all technology, it's polarized, meaning that it's coming directly kind of at
Yes.
you. Yeah.
Okay, so then let's talk maybe first thing in the morning, kind of what you're looking for. Best thing to do is get some early light exposure.
Yeah. So this is going, like, everyone's like, oh, I got to rearrange my day. Yes, you have to rearrange your day. Like, like there's no way around it. Um, we can get into the whole night owl versus morning person. Um, there technically are no night owls, despite what people want to claim. You've just trained yourself to be a night owl. Um, we should align our day basically with the sun. So whenever the sun comes up, you should be up. So first thing in the morning, um, you don't necessarily need to be up 30 minutes before the sun comes up, but being up a little bit before the actual sunrise would be ideal. But then being outside first thing in the morning, you don't technically need to see the sun, like, hit your face. So if you're living in a little bit more of a city environment or an area where there's a bunch of trees, you don't necessarily have to be, like, visually at the beach seeing the sunrise, but you need to be outside when the sunrise is occurring.
And that's just because the amount of photons that are just going to be entering through our
Well, that
atmosphere.
that that gets into the next thing. So we talked about the perfect balance of red and blue, and the first thing in the morning we're getting the highest amount. We get this in the afternoon into the evening as well, but first thing in the morning we're getting that red and infrared light. So 43% of the spectrum is red and infrared light from the sun, and we're almost getting that exclusively in the morning. So the most effective red light panel in the world, early morning sunlight. It's free. Um, so that is definitely one of the reasons why you want to get out for early morning sun. But the second reason is the intensity, so the lux, um, and that just go like so. I've got an app on my phone. If I shined at these lights directly at the lights, it'll tell you like the brightness. We could go outside, and today's not really a bright day. It's a cloudy day. It's going to be 10 to 100 times brighter outside right now on a cloudy day than it is inside. And so the lux or the brightness is also super important as far as like alertness. So whenever people are, inside all day, behind a screen all day, and they wonder why they're tired and fatigued and they have low energy, it's because your body is expecting this bright signal. And no matter how bright you make the artificial lights, yes, they make these like sad. So in the wintertime, people get seasonal affect disorder. And that's just where it's so dark for so long. Daylight savings times, we can talk about that. That's a terrible idea. But so because it's dark for longer, we just don't get that bright sunlight. Um, we're not exposed to that bright light for long enough. We can kind of become a little depressed. So if you're in an office building with no windows, no access to the outside world, you can get a mini bit of depression just by being inside. Um, so we can talk about getting back to the ADHD component. So John Ott, he was a time-lapse photographer and he worked for Disney.
Okay.
So he was up in New York, but actually moved to Sarasota because he realized he needed to be closer to the sun or closer to higher intensity sun. But anyway, so he did this.
Is that for work or for just personal well-being?
So personal well-being. So like he realized, like this is back in the 70s, that the sunlight was super important. And so they did this study on school children, and it was basically a time-lapse photography of like a school classroom. And so they studied the children under normal fluorescent lights. The kids were chaotic. They weren't paying attention. They were interrupting. They weren't behaving very well. All the things that teachers would hate. So then what they did, so John Ott, he was time-lapse photographer, but he also had this company that focused on making better light bulbs. And so he was making this light bulb that was trying to mimic as close to the natural sunlight as possible. So incandescent lights, which again, this is another topic. So incandescent lights have a little bit of UV, they have a little bit of infrared, they have closer to the full spectrum. So he was using an incandescent light bulb and he was trying to tune it as close as he could to the sun, to the spectrum of the sun. And so they put in these new bulbs. They took out all the fluorescent bulbs. They also then opened up the windows. They allowed natural, daylight to come in. And what they found was outstanding, like just ridiculously, like the kids were calm, they were quiet, they were paying attention, they were reading, they were asking good questions. And this is published work back in 1976. But because John Ott was trying to develop this technology, again, this kind of gets into the conspiracy theories, but he basically got shut down by the government. We can debate that, but it's really true. And so,
Was there like, I guess at the time, big business as far as
yeah, GE
okay,
and
yeah, G, okay,
all of these companies, they were moving in a different direction. Yeah, in 1976, everyone made an incandescent light bulb. So I'm not saying that wasn't part of it, but they were aware of how light affects attention and how light changes our biology and how light runs our biochemistry. They knew all this because that work was done in the 50s. And so they were already transitioning well before everything else had caught up as far as like computers and all this other information. So they were setting us up for some of these other things. So whenever someone gets close to the truth, they get silenced. That's really what it comes down to.
I think it probably goes against making profit.
Well, yeah, because so this goes back to so okay, this study, Nora Vocal, 2011, she did a study. This is the again National Toxicity Report. Um, this is done by the U.S. government. She showed that a cell phone changes your insulin levels and your blood glucose response.
Is that because of, I guess, just like is that because you're staring at the screen, or is it just because you're kind of like talking on the phone, or is there any parameters that I was kind of focusing on?
It was like in your pocket, like using it. So it was basically just being around it.
So okay,
So
so it wasn't necessarily maybe not to do with like the type of light that it was emitting. It's maybe more with the the EMF type of thing.
it was both.
Okay.
So the conclusion is the specific frequencies that screen technology use can spike blood glucose without eating one bit of food. So this goes through hormonal changes. It's
So that's gonna give you like a dopamine spike.
dopamine spike and basically ACTH. So that's adrenocorticotropic.
Thyroid hormone.
Correct. So it's going to stimulate basically an adrenal response, which is going to raise blood sugar. So you're getting that without even eating an ounce of food. So just by being under blue light, your blood glucose is being elevated.
So it's like they kind of conspiracy theory. Uh, they knew the science, and it's like they just engineered a better product to which I'm sure we've all heard, like fighting for our attention.
Absolutely. And it's not a conspiracy theory if the data is there to back it up. And the papers are there, they're just suppressed and whitewashed. So the average public isn't able to access them on a regular or easy access basis, if you will. So, you can say it's conspiracy all you want, but there's a stack of papers that are supporting all this. It just goes against like what you said, the profit margins. Because if I can sell you Ozempic because I know we can raise your blood sugar, and then I can now on the back end sell you a drug, like why wouldn't I, right?
Yeah, I wonder if there's any ties to like the sugar industry and then this big pharma.
There is. So well before Ozempic came out, Amgen, who was in charge of the leptin trials. So leptin was a hormone that was found, of all places, the Rockefeller University in New York in 1994. So leptin is a hormone that basically is your energy accountant. It basically tells you if you have leptin, you have ghrelin, but it basically tells you, how much energy like you're utilizing. So the leptin trials were basically suppressed because they knew that they were already going to be like coming out with the GLP-1 drugs down the road. So if that information came out that we can change leptin levels with these other means, it's going to ruin their ability to sell these other drugs.
Wow. Uh, so let's maybe talk and thought through kind of the systems maybe a little bit, just briefly, uh, that kind of light has effect on. So we want a blue kind of balanced red light early on in the morning. It kind of spikes our cortisol levels. It
Yeah,
kind of
so I don't want to interrupt, but I want to make it clear. So first thing in the morning, the sunrise is non-negotiable as far as a light standpoint, um, if you're trying to make changes. So I understand if
I mean,
you
it literally
can't.
it sets our internal clock as far as all of our other hormone releases for the rest
Correct.
of the
So I
day.
guess what I'm trying to say is by just flipping on your lights inside, it's not good enough. So you're not going to get the same benefit as going outside, regardless of what it looks like outside, whether it's raining, whether it's cloudy, whether it's snowing, whether it's a bright sunny morning. The morning sunlight is really the only way to truly set your circadian clock. Um, the indoor lights aren't really providing the correct stimulus. So, like, is it better than, I guess, pitch black? Maybe, but
Uh, how long?
depends. So the sicker you are, the more sunlight you need. But if I had to put a parameter to it, I would say if you're out at sunrise, try to get 10 minutes. If you can get 20 minutes, better. If you can get 30 minutes, even better. If you can,
Spend all day outside.
I mean, honestly, because like
I mean, it's what our body. It's where our
that
body
is
is adapted to
exactly
be.
like whether you believe God or evolution doesn't matter. Like Garden of Eden versus like we were designed outside.
Yeah.
We weren't designed to be inside. So the outdoor environment is what we're tuned for. So that's what our body is wanting as far as the signaling goes. So if you can get outside, um, I mean, basically from like right now it happens pretty early, but if you can be out from sunrise to when UVA first starts to kind of rise, which I think right now um, is in that 7:30, 8 o'clock range. And we can check that later if we need to. But like that would be like if you could be out that entire time, um, that would be wise as far as like early morning, setting your morning daily rhythm, if you will.
Okay, so morning. We want to mobilize, or getting more of a blue light or balanced light, early morning light, early on, kind of starts the hormone process. Kind of see it
Correct.
rise in cortisol levels, which kind of mobilizes energy and kind of gets us moving.
Correct. Yeah. So again, we talked about dopamine previous. So early morning sunlight is basically um, a spike of dopamine for us.
And that's the neurochemical that kind of causes us to take action.
Yeah. So it's the molecule of more, if you will. So it allows us to either keep going or seek out additional things.
I mean, which makes sense because 2,000 years ago, it's like we needed that kickstart to get out and go find food and provide resources for our family.
Correct. So getting back to early morning. So I need to put a caveat to all this. So no sunglasses, no glasses, and preferably no contacts. You listen to Andrew Huberman, he's going to tell you that glasses and contacts are okay. Yes, I understand you need to see. I understand people don't need to trip and fall perfectly, but go out on your deck. Don't have them on. Be in a safe area because you want unfiltered light. No, you're not supposed to look directly at the sun and completely stare at the sun for hours on end, but you want unfiltered light in your eye, because your eye is the signal. Your skin is also, think of your skin as a solar panel. So I know in the wintertime it's cold, so people are wearing clothes or jackets, but now that it's warmer, having more skin exposed is actually better. So we have a blue light detector called melanopsin in our skin. We actually need that again to help that hormonal cascade. So getting the sunlight on our skin, getting the sunlight directly in the eyes. Again, don't look directly at the sun. If it hurts, don't keep looking at it. But the reason why people like wear sunglasses is they're sensitive. Just like whenever you first started working out and you did a heavy set of deadlifts and you had trouble sitting down the next day, same story, right? You're sensitive to bright light because you're always in dim light. And so, you know, Oakley or any of these sunglass companies, they're basically, they're keeping you in the dark, basically.
All right. So what about? Okay, let's progress throughout the day. So middle of the day, what sort of light are we looking kind of for there, and how does that change? Uh, does
So
does the and yeah, maybe how does that affect our differences in hormones?
So, first thing in the morning, the goal is to get red and infrared light. That is what we're trying to accomplish first thing in the morning. So, if we look at the mitochondria are the target of red light therapy panels. The sun is a free red light therapy panel. So, the
So the mitochondria is basically the energy warehouse in our cells, which produce most on all of our energy.
yes. So and again, we can talk about the mitochondria in depth down the road if we need to, but basically the mitochondria dictate more than our genetic makeup. We can look at the amount of changes that the mitochondria go through with epigenetic differences compared to the genome is relatively stable. The mitochondria genome is unstable, so the differences are pretty profound. But anyway, so getting back to mitochondria. So there are these specific proteins in the mitochondria that accept light. And one of them in particular, I mean, red light is the target. So getting red light in the morning basically gets the mitochondria like going in the right direction. So imagine there's a clock that can spin clockwise or counterclockwise, and clockwise is the correct direction. It can work if it goes backwards, but it doesn't work as efficiently. So every morning when you see the sunrise or whenever you get that red infrared light from the early morning sunrise, all your clocks get set accurately, like the most accurate atomic clock, but then every mitochondria starts spinning in the correct direction and makes energy production for the rest of the day more efficient. So first thing in the morning, if you don't see the sunrise, you're basically not going to be able to fat burn effectively. We can talk about that, but you can diet and exercise till the cows come home. But if you're not seeing the sunrise, you're truly not going to be able to fat burn correctly. But now you're asking midday or throughout the day. So first thing in the morning, red and infrared light. Now it happens much earlier, but there's a point at which we're getting both red and infrared and then UVA light. That's the next critical piece. There's several apps out there that can help you figure out in your local area, because every time zone and every latitude is going to be a little bit different. So the UVA rise is the next critical piece. And so red and infrared coupled with UVA, that's where our regeneration programs start to come online, if you will. So tissue regeneration happens when the tissues are exposed to both red and infrared and UVA light. And that happens, again, right now, it's kind of in that 7:30, 8 o'clock range. So it's still not that midday brightest bright sun. It's still earlier in the day.
And is that kind of whether these red light panels we see today coming on the market are producing?
So they're not, most of the panels aren't producing the UV. That's completely separate. But the near infrared and the red are what they're going after. And so you technically need both the UVA and the infrared A light coupled together to truly create that regeneration pathway. So Robert O. Becker wrote the book Body Electric. He's another researcher. He was an MD that studied the regeneration pathways, and he studied how bone regenerates. So if you break a bone, he found that bone actually, it doesn't heal, it completely regenerates. Bone is the only tissue that really completely regenerates. So we've lost the ability to a certain extent to regenerate other tissues because we're disconnected from the frequencies that are the most fundamental to healing. Whereas if we look at salamanders and some amphibians, they have the ability to completely regenerate. So if you cut off a lizard's tail, the tail completely grows back over time, right? And if you cut it off again, it'll grow back. If you cut off an arm, it'll grow back. So he did all this research again back in the 50s and 60s, and he was able to grow back a 9-year-old's fingertip. So the fingertip was completely amputated at the knuckle, and they were able to grow back the bone, the tendon, the ligament, the nerve, the fingertip, the actual fingerprint itself. So the fingertips are the only, I mean, yes, we know that the liver is able to regenerate a little bit as well, but bone and our fingertips are the only components really. But we can harness the regenerative powers of light by being in this very specific wavelength of infrared A and UVA light kind of in this mid-morning.
Okay. All right, how about midday, kind of lunchtime?
Yep.
What are we kind of looking for
so
there?
midday lunchtime is your vitamin D window. So there's a lot of evidence that vitamin D is like super important. There's vitamin D receptors all over the body in areas that you wouldn't expect. And so vitamin D is super important, but UVB light, which is present at around that solar noon time. So in our area, it's around that kind of 12, and it's really, it extends out a little bit longer. But if you're looking at the peak window, kind of that 12 to kind of 1:32.
When the sun is the highest?
Basically, whenever the sun's the highest. And so you're looking for maximum UV at that point. So this is going to give you infrared A, red, UVA, and UVB. This is going to give you everything. Whenever we're talking quote unquote full spectrum, the midday sun is the full spectrum. Now, why do people burn? Why do people because they're never getting exposed to the red and infrared in the morning, and they're never getting the UVA and the infrared in the mid-morning. They just go straight out, oh, I need to get my vitamin D. I'm going to get it, right in the middle of the day. So just imagine you're an office worker. you work all day in an indoor, environment. You barely go outside, to your car in the morning to go to work, your car to come home. You might go outside a little bit, but you're basically inside all the time. Then all of a sudden you're like, hey, let's go to Florida, take the kids for vacation to Florida. Well, you're the average American. You don't get up early. You get up relatively late.
I know I
So
get up early. I get up before the sun, and I'm actually usually at work before the sun, so I run into my own issues there.
yeah, and that's another topic that we can help to try to configure. But so this person is never exposed to early morning sunlight, never exposed to that UVA light. So they get their kids ready, and they basically take them out around 10:30, 11 o'clock, right? Well, the sun is basically starting to peak about that time. So maximum intensity right around the corner. And so they get out there and they fry like a shrimp because they have no protection. So there's basically a concept called a solar callus. So same thing whenever it comes to exercise. We have to slowly kind of build up a tolerance to higher loads. We have to build up a tolerance to higher amounts of sun exposure.
Now, can you, like let's say you're going on these vacations, you're going to expose yourself to, you want to be outside. Is it so? Can you kind of mitigate some of your prior non-vacation time by like when you're on vacation, getting up early and kind of going outside early to kind of like prime the system so that it can accept it, or are you just kind of already screwed no matter what?
No, 100%. So this is one of the cool things about the body. The body is adaptable. So if June 1st or whatever, we're going to Destin, Florida, you can start priming your system to be able to accept that bright sun. So, if you can get 10 minutes first thing in the morning, if you can get 10 minutes kind of in that 8 to 9 o'clock, and if you can get basically you need to take sun breaks. So, we talk about smoke breaks.
Hopefully not too much these days.
It's surprising on how many people still smoke, and that's again another kind of wild, like why anyone would smoke. But anyway, we need to be taking sun breaks. So if you had the opportunity to break up sitting at your desk and you could get outside for even 2 minutes at a time, just to expose your eyes to natural sunlight throughout the day. So think of it as like sun snacks. You would be so much better off. And then if you had the opportunity to also expose as much skin as possible in short bouts.
Yeah.
So again, in the beginning, it's going to be short because you're not able to tolerate as much, but over time, you're going to get to the point where you can handle more. And like I did this with my parents. Like they had a lot of skepticism, but I did this with both my dad and mom, and I got them outside just little bits here and there. And
gym to your cars too. So I would say to clients, like every hour and a half or something, just put your body through some range of motion. This is like your desk jockey clients.
Yeah, for joint health, right?
Yes, but then also maybe just go outside too.
So if you can go outside and do your cars while you're outside, even better. Do your morning routine, drink your coffee, sunrise, cars, perfect way to wake up, get your body moving, and then also get your internal environment optimized. But getting back to like the sun breaks, so I think that if we can slowly expose the body to these natural frequencies, we can prepare the skin to be able to handle more, photonic energy, because the midday sun is or can be harsh, especially the lower we go. We go to Florida, even if you go to like Central America, the Caribbean, Why are the people in those areas darker? That's their natural sunscreen. Their melanin is their sunscreen. So if we can develop our melanin in our skin, we can then protect ourselves from the negative effects. So if you look at Scandinavian people, why are they blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin? Because their sun environment is terrible. They're trying to accept as much sun as possible. So when the sun is out, they're trying to collect as many photons as possible. So the lighter the skin, the lighter the eyes, the lighter the hair, the more they can accept. But the funny thing is, like, they're the same people that are generally afraid of the sun. But their sun environment is pretty poor, so they're also the people that need more sun. And then on the flip side, why are darker skinned people that live in Detroit, Michigan having more chronic disease, more diabetes, more gut health issues? Because they're in a poor sun environment, they have a bunch of melanin, and they're not getting enough sun.
Yeah.
So their bodies are designed for, like, there's a huge Somalian population that lives in Detroit. Somalians are ridiculously dark. They're almost purple. So they're basically designed to live at the equator. They're designed to live at the highest strength sun, and they're in Detroit, Michigan, which is terrible light. So the reason why they're having some of these health problems, there's a lot of reasons, but we could draw one of the main reasons is they're just in a mismatched sun environment for their skin type, and they're paying the consequence with some of their health issues.
Yeah, because it's like we usually, at least in today's society, I feel like with minorities here, like at least in the United States, it's there seems to be more chronic disease kind of floating around, and I think it's probably just to do with our society and our everyday environment of just being indoors more.
Yeah, and this is nothing against any particular population, but it's like they're designed for a particular environment, and we're designed for another environment. But it doesn't mean that we can't optimize. We can still try to optimize in St. Louis, Missouri, for the sun environment that we have, and we can try to harness as much sun as possible. And I think just getting the awareness out that it's actually important, because you hear the dermatologist, you hear the ophthalmologist, like you hear everyone talking about the negative consequences of the sun. Slather on sunscreen, which is another thing. So you go to the beach, you slather on sunscreen, you're not making vitamin D. You're blocking the ability to make vitamin D. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm going out, I'm getting my midday sun, I'm wearing sunglasses, I'm wearing sunscreen, you're not getting the health benefits that.
But it's I don't want to say it's not necessarily their fault or promoting the wrong thing. It's just because we're just, I guess, cooped up inside. It's like our body, if we're not getting that early like sunlight exposure, and we're essentially, we don't have the tolerance for it. So it actually, I mean, just going directly out into direct sun exposure is probably not the best thing. We need to build up like kind of like this natural, more of a natural tolerance for it, and getting more early light in to kind of prime the system.
I mean, I could be very controversial and say it doesn't matter. You're better off getting burnt. You're better off getting it than not getting it. I could be the more moderate approach and be like, yeah, you should, But I think in this, people need a jolt. People need a wake up. They need to change their environment. They need to change how they're thinking about some of these negative health ramifications. And so I can bring up, there's a study, it was done in Sweden. So Sweden, of all places, low sunlight yield, poor sunlight environment. They found all-cause mortality regardless of melanoma and or skin cancer exposure. was the more sun you get, the better your longevity. So it didn't matter the fact that these people potentially also had some negative health effects. They still lived longer than people that didn't get sun. So, and this was done in Sweden with a poor light environment, and it still showed a positive effect for getting more sun. So if we're truly trying to make a change, the answer is get more, not less. And the answer would be get it whenever you can. Don't be like, yes, if we're trying to optimize, there are times of the day where you want to get it. But if you say, I only have this window to get it, I would say you're better off getting it than not getting it.
And so that probably then probably the best case would be if you're going out and your first exposure to light is that midday highest is just like duration. Just limit your duration
Correct.
Early on.
So you don't have to teach quantum biology to lions and hippos. They know when to seek the shade. So if they're laying out in the sun, they know that I'm getting hot, I'm going to go find a tree. Same thing for you. Don't just roast for the sake of roasting because someone said, oh, go get some sun. There's so many benefits, like sitting under a tree, so the green of the tree leaves magnifies the red and infrared light. It actually helps reflect infrared light. So again, it's free. You can go sit out under a tree, read a book. Don't be on your phone. Read something, whatever, talk to someone. But being outside under a tree in the shade, better than being inside. So if you have an opportunity to eat your lunch outside, eat it outside versus inside.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many different industries that are going to try and say the opposite of that just because it'll go against their profit margins.
Yeah. So again, getting back to insulin response and our light environment. So another research study done. So this was done with a light bulb, a red. It wasn't even infrared. It was like 660 nanometer light. So just right in the middle of the red spectrum. They shined it on the patient's shoulder for 15 minutes. Then they had them do a glucose tolerance test. So that's basically you drink this sugary substance and you look at the insulin response. So they did this with a control that didn't have the red light exposure, and then they compared it to having the red light exposure. So there was a 30% drop in insulin response having the red light versus not having the red light. So if I told you that you could lower your insulin response.
So is this why they say after meals it's like go on a walk? Is it because is it more the exercise, or is it actually more to do with like the light that you're getting, or both?
So the commonly held wisdom would be it's the walk, but the more we know about the light environment, I would say it's the light environment then coupled with the activity. The light environment is probably playing more of a role than what we give it credit for.
Because when you're going on a walk, you're going to, that energy that you just consumed, you're going to essentially start mobilizing it.
Correct. But, if you, whenever we look at these like constant glucose monitors or whatever, and, basically the goal is how can we keep insulin from spiking, right? We're trying to keep this like on a relatively kind of steady slope.
That's actually great. I've seen actually a couple members recently just like doing it now. I messed around with it a little over a year, maybe like 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Just to try to just learn more about myself. But I'm glad it's now you can get it without a prescription. You can just kind of, if nothing else, just bring more awareness to foods and how different factors kind of spike our insulin levels and our glucose levels, because the more we're learning, the more we're starting to understand, I guess, the importance of controlling like these insulin spikes and staying away from insulin resistance and moving kind of towards more insulin sensitivity.
Correct. And so if I could tell you naturally by getting sunlight or red light that you would get a 30% decrease in your insulin levels, everyone should be raising their hand and signing up for it. It's free. Go outside. Like, you don't need, and I understand there are potential constraints, but it's like, why wouldn't you if you had the opportunity?
Yes.
And so it's one of these things that we could even talk about the fact that the glucose monitor is now emitting EMF waves because it's talking to your phone. This goes back to that 2011 study that we talked about. Having your phone around you raises your blood glucose. So now just monitoring your blood glucose with one of these monitors, you're actually raising your levels regardless of the environment that you're in. So I don't know if we can say exactly how much, but we have the research to back up the fact that having a cell phone near you does make these changes. So the Bluetooth or the Wi-Fi device is also basically the same thing. So we could extrapolate a very similar effect. So we could say that those are potentially, like, while the information is beneficial, how we extrapolate the information may not be the most beneficial.
So if you're listening to this on speakers, not on headphones.
Whole nother, yes, AirPods. If you want to irradiate your brain, go listen to this on AirPods.
That's kind of how I kind of touched on the subject. It was kind of getting into. I used to wear my headphones just all the time. I had wore these bone conducting, so I could hear ambient sounds, but I would just forget that I had them on. And like the past year, like I've just been struggling with sleep. And then I started, who's the guy? Marino.
You probably were thinking of like Matt Walker.
No. Dr. Marino, the going places.
Going somewhere. Andrew Marino. Yeah.
Marino, yes.
So he worked in Dr. Becker's lab. So he was a PhD student that studied under Dr. Robert O. Becker, but he really looked at the electromagnetic frequencies and the effects on the body. So yes, going somewhere, go read that book.
Anyways, it's only been like a couple months now, but I think there is a definite noticeable effect. I definitely would struggle waking up and then being able to go back to sleep. Granted, I do have a daughter who's under 1 year, so that definitely has an effect in it.
Of course.
But even now, like, yeah, she's getting older, she's sleeping better, but I am able to go back to sleep when she does wake up in the middle of the night. So there is a little anecdotal on my part there that it seems to be working a little bit better. All right, midday. What about evening light, and how does that play effect?
So think of evening as the same thing as the morning. So first thing in the morning, you're trying to start your day. The evening should be winding down your day. So you need the sun getting closer to the horizon, again, kind of switching back to that red and infrared, orange, if you will, to signal to the brain that you need to start winding down. So the mechanism at which you're waking up that we get in the morning, we're getting a similar kind of opposite effect, if you will, to wind down.
But it all started with that early exposure, which set our internal clock. So then by getting it again, it by getting almost that repeat signal, it tells us to kind of go the opposite direction.
Correct. So the brain can sense. I saw the early morning sunlight. I saw the midday sunlight. I saw the horizon, at the end of the day, and it knows that the day should be winding down. Now, again, you go listen to Andrew Huberman, and he's going to say that seeing the sun set is going to help offset some of the negative effects of seeing blue light at night. While that is true, I would not want you to think that, oh, if I see the sunset, I now can be on my phone and watch TV safely, because while, again, it does give you some offset, you're ruining your sleep architecture, you're ruining the start of the next day by giving yourself that blue light late at night or into the evening. Because what we didn't talk about earlier is all screen technology, all computers, all TVs, the color temperature is basically 5,500 Kelvin, which is, if we took a spectroscope out to the midday sun, they're going to basically match. So looking at your phone is the same as looking at midday sun. So that's also the reason why first thing in the morning, whenever you get up, don't be looking at your phone, because you're signaling to yourself it's morning, but now you're looking at your phone, which is saying it's noon, midday. So it's giving this competing signal. So your hormones don't know what to do.
So what about like these type of filters you can install on your phone? Can that help mitigate some of the...
So the iPhone has what's called night shift, and then like their kind of like amber filter. To be honest, that's not enough. So there's a way that you can hack the iPhone legally. Like you can go into the accessibility features and you can turn on the color filters, and you can completely like skew the color filter red, where you can hardly see any blue and green.
Is there a good time of day you want to do that after a certain time?
So basically, if you're going to be using your phone after sunset,
100%.
I would be turning it on around like whenever you're outside watching the sunset or getting that evening sun. I would be flipping my phone to that feature. If I'm looking at my phone before 10 o'clock in the morning, I probably have it on the red setting.
Okay, so you're not getting those conflicting...
Yeah, and so very first thing in the morning, I try to minimize my time on screens whatsoever. Like I'm not checking my email, I'm not checking text messages. For that matter, I turn my phone completely off at night. So like if I get a bunch of signals like of missed messages, like I don't respond until later in the day. So if you don't get a message, that's the reason why. So first thing in the morning, you don't want that sharp blue light exposure. In the evening, you also don't want that sharp blue light exposure. So there's other software for computers called f.lux. That's a free software that you can download for Macs or even PCs. I would highly recommend it. It's worth, and you can change the color temperatures depending on time of day. So if you have to work on your computer at these hours, I would definitely be utilizing. Now, if you're doing creative work when you need pictures, try to do that more in the middle of the day, whenever it's going to affect you the least. But if you're answering emails or whatever, you can be using the color filters, no problem. Blue light blocking glasses, again, they're not an excuse to be on your phone till 2 o'clock in the morning. They're not an excuse to be watching TV all night. If you've got the clear ones, they're useless. Don't bother. The clear ones are
they should have like an amberish tint to them.
So
Yellowy.
if you're looking at the day ones, there's a day one that's more of a yellowish tint to slightly orange, and they're going to block roughly 50% of the blue light. That would be what you're looking at. First thing early morning, like if you're getting up before the sun comes up, blue light blocking glasses technically would be beneficial. After sunset, also, I would be like, if you're going to be up, having basically a red tint or orangey red tint would be the way to go. There are expensive companies. There are more cheaper companies. Typically, the ones that you get off Amazon, I wouldn't trust. There are reputable brands, and we can put maybe in the show notes or whatever. But don't just go buy the cheapest ones and think that they're beneficial. You kind of pay for what you get.
Yeah.
Or you get what you pay for, basically.
All right, so take home, just try to early morning or sunrise, kind of somewhere around sunrise.
Yeah, so sunrise, there's no replacement for seeing the sunrise.
So let's say maybe if you're not used to getting outdoor light exposure, good place to try to get like 10 minutes in kind of each phase of the day.
Yeah, I mean, whether you drink coffee or not, whether you like whatever it is, your morning routine, try to make your morning routine getting outside. Even if you have kids, like this is an opportunity to help, like, hey kids, we're going to go outside and we're going to eat breakfast outside, or we're going to spend 10 minutes as a family outside together. Like, use this as an opportunity to maybe be together, talk with your son or daughter or your wife, whatever. But try to get some time, that first thing in the morning. If you don't wake up exactly at sunrise, just say you happen to wake up at 8 o'clock. I would still recommend the first thing you do after you go to the bathroom or make your coffee, whatever, go outside.
All right, then midday.
Yeah, so think of midday as your opportunity to get your vitamin D. If the body makes it, you shouldn't be taking it as a supplement. That's another conversation for another time. But if you can make vitamin D naturally, there's no reason to take it from a pill. So the more vitamin D that you can make from midday sun exposure, the better. There's reasons to potentially supplement in certain situations, but I'm 100% for getting as much natural sunlight, because I can show you the diagram of vitamin D. Like, the vitamin D that you get from a pill is one molecule. The vitamin D that you get from the sun is a whole bunch. And so there's all these subcomponents of vitamin D that you don't get whenever you take a pill. And so it's also not sulfated. So vitamin D is a hormone. It's fat soluble, but it has to be sulfated to become water soluble, to become converted.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's more in depth, but it's important to know that whenever you take a pill, it doesn't just naturally form what you think it's forming because your doctor told you, oh, you're low on vitamin D, take this pill. So nature doesn't make mistakes. Nature gives you the recipe. You just have to figure out how to harness it. And so moral of the story is midday sun, UVB light, get 10 minutes. But if you can, slowly work your way up to 20, slowly work your way up to 30, your body's going to thank you. Because we see during, the winter time, you're not, in St. Louis between November and March, February, like, you're really not able to make vitamin D no matter how bright the sun is. So there's a dead zone for vitamin D. So the goal would be make as much throughout the spring, summer, and fall as possible that you get yourself through the winter. Now, there's some people that might need to supplement a little bit during the winter time, But during the summertime, springtime, you should 100% be trying to get as much of it either through food sources or through natural sunlight as possible.
And then evening.
Evening, that's basically your time to wind down your day.
Maybe after you eat, and hopefully you're eating before it's dark outside.
Yeah,
we won't get into that right now.
we can talk about that, but just quickly, you should basically be eating. You should be eating your dinner before the sun goes down. You should be eating your dinner or your breakfast. If we were getting specific, and we can talk about this more later, but you have the infrared in the morning. You have the UVA at that kind of 7:30. Like, you should be eating your breakfast before the UVA rises. Again, that's getting into the nitty gritty, but breakfast should be after the sunrise and dinner should be before the sun sets.
Mm-hmm.
So you eat your dinner, you go for a walk, you're getting the benefit of being active, you get the benefit of getting that evening sun. It's a 2-for-1, and you get to spend some time with the family.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so this is a topic that we can, there's so many more avenues that we can go down. We kind of pulled from a whole bunch of different areas, but we can continue to explore this in several additional pathways, if you will.
So yeah, just get outside 10 minutes here and there throughout the day, and see how it makes a difference.
Yep, give it a try.
All right, thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.